I would like to welcome everyone to the Illuminate Africa Youth Conference, hosted by the AfriGrowth Foundation. Wherever you're joining us from any parts of the globe, you're highly welcome. As we get into the meat of the matter, I would like to let us understand what is going on around our world at this particular time, and most especially as it relates to Africans. Africa has been predicted by highly reputable global organizations to hit the 2.5 billion population mark in 2050. Nigeria, which is the most populous Black nation in the world, will hit the 400 million population mark by the same year, 2050. It's also predicted that about half of that population will be youthful, which means they'll be between the ages of 18 to 25. In as much as a huge population benefits a society in diverse ways, it also presents a lot of challenges. And these challenges we're beginning to see even as COVID-19 ravages the entire globe right about now. The Illuminate Africa Youth Summit has been put together by the illustrious AfriGrowth Foundation that has been around for the past 14 years, championing youth development and community development initiatives to better the lives of African youths on a year-to-year basis. This conference has been put together at this particular time when the world is witnessing the ravaging coronavirus and its economic and social impacts on the population of Africa, especially the youthful population. I would like to welcome all our distinguished guests who are hereby present, and I would like to quickly hand over to the president of the AfriGrowth Foundation as she delivers her opening remarks and introduces our Honorable Minister of Youth and Sports for Nigeria, Honorable Minister Sunday Dare. Over to you, President Dayo Keshi.
I am most delighted to welcome you all, the Permanent Mission to ECOWAS, West Africa Civil Society Forum, West Africa Civil Society Institute, Nigerian Network of NGOs, All Africa Students Union, Chief Executive Officers of partner NGOs, friends of AfriGrowth Foundation, and of course, our very dear participants. You are most welcome to this special edition of the Illuminate Africa Youth Conference. I'm sure we are all doing well. We can to remain safe in this COVID-19 era. It has really been a challenging year, but I believe that we'll all emerge stronger and even more resolute after this pandemic. Africa's robust youth environment and increasing youth population makes her the most youthful populated continent in the world. According to the African Union, about 65% of the total population of Africa is currently between the ages of 18 and 35, and indeed making Africa the continent with the youngest population when compared to regions such as Europe and Africa and Asia. Africa's greatest asset lies in its youthful demography. As the youth provide a huge social, economic, and political capital required to drive socio-political and economic development. Indeed, Africa's growth and development cannot be realized if adequate investment is not made in youth. The theme of International Youth Day 2020 is Youth Engagement for Global Action, which seeks to demonstrate the importance of youth engagement at local, national, and global levels as a prerequisite for building credible institutions, systems, and processes. The emerging global and regional consensus on youth development clearly underscores the need for youth to be fully engaged and empowered to take their place as national assets. Currently, with 7 of the top 10 fastest growing economies in the world, Importantly, Africa's growth is being driven by her youth, brimming with talent and energy. Indeed, the importance of youth to nation building could be likened to a car engine without which the vehicle cannot move. So also without her youth, a nation can never thrive. The role of youth in nation building is too relevant to be jettisoned. They serve as the backbone of a society. Since inception, and for over a decade of work in Africa, AfriGrowth Foundation has pursued a positive approach to youth development that applies a holistic strategy to the complex set of youth needs. Consequently, the foundation's youth-focused programs have been tailored and customized by building the capacity of young people towards intimidating paradigm shift to position youth as active agents of change. The foundation's programs utilize mentoring as the main vehicle of youth empowerment. AfriGrowth Foundation believes that investing in youth will culminate in placing them on a better pedestal to impact Africa and the world at large. In 2018, AfriGrowth Foundation took a giant stride in strengthening its approach to youth development as it convened its as it convenes its 195 leaders converged with the intent of sensitizing and mobilizing their expertise in the areas that affect their growth and development in the nation. The core thrust of repositioning Nigeria Youth Summit was to entrench a culture of citizenship, servitude, moral value, and patriotism in 195 Nigerian youth leaders, especially as they were trained on how to channel their individual goals to impact positively in their immediate space of influence, be it their families, workplaces, societies, communities, via the development of self-learning practices. The major resolution at the end of the summit in 2018 was the unanimous decision to spread the tentacles of this enlightenment campaign anchored on changing the current mindset of youth and reposition them to take their place as national assets and engines of growth beyond Nigeria to other African countries. This resolution birthed the Illuminate Africa Youth Conference. AfriGrowth Foundation believes that through the main powerhouse driven by youth, leadership in the continent can be highly enhanced. Youth must understand that they are the source of light that can positively ensure that Africa illuminates and shines bright in all its ramifications. The Illuminate Africa Youth Conference will create a virtual opening and inclusive platform for Africa youth civil society organizations, stakeholders on youth development in the continent, and African youth to converge with intent to dialogue and address issues affecting youth participation and engagement in developing this continent. The maiden edition of with the theme instituting Pan-African youth engagement and inclusion in era will ex civil society organizations in a post-COVID-19 era, especially in the implementation of the African Youth Charter. The African Union Constitutive Act and the African Union Commission Strategic Plan 2004 to 2007 gave due priority to youth development and empowerment. Furthermore, it underscores the importance of youth participation and involvement in the development of the continent. To give substance to this commitment, the African Union developed a policy framework in the form of the African Youth Charter, which was adopted by heads of African states at their summit in Banjul in July 2006 and was finally adopted for use in August 8, 2009. African Youth Charter provides government, youth, civil society, and international partners with a continental framework which underlines the rights, duties, and freedom of youth, and strategic plans for youth empowerment. The adoption of the African Youth Charter in 2009 was followed by the Youth Decade Plan of Action 2009 to 2018, which was approved and endorsed by African ministers in charge of youth affairs, the African Union Executive Council and member states to accelerate the implementation of the Charter. Building on the achievements and learning from the Youth Decade Plan of Action, the African Plan of Action for Youth Empowerment 2019 to 2023, APAYE, is a 5-year continental framework which has been developed for the continued implementation of the African Youth Charter. Based on the global clarion call for youth engagement and inclusive development, I dare say that the African Youth Charter is indeed a unique instrument for this noble purpose, as it takes into consideration African values with respect to youth development. Currently, 39 African countries have ratified and adopted the African Youth Charter. It is imperative for African youth to effectively champion the post-ratification process by advocating for the implementation of the Charter. This will be achieved via the creation of partnership and synergy of diverse youth civil society organizations in Africa. Youth-focused civil society organizations have a unique role to play in the advocacy for the ratification and implementation of the African Youth Charter. Furthermore, monitoring of policies and action plans developed by African states in line with the African Youth Charter must be implemented. Civil society organizations can equally serve to bridge the engagement and communication gap between key stakeholders in government and the youths they serve. The Illuminate Africa Youth Conference is founded on the belief that a Pan-African approach is required to catalyze growth and development in Africa. African youths must understand and collaborate with their peers across the continent to remove barriers to trade, end conflict, and stimulate widespread positive change. Civil society organizations should play a role in facilitating this partnership and collaboration. AfriGrowth Foundation submits that an intercontinental growth can be achieved via improved partnership and synergy between diverse civil society organizations across the continent. The time is imminent for civil society organizations to enhance collaboration in the vanguard of building more sustainable systems which can effectively monitor policies and action plans set in place for youth empowerment. The current COVID-19 era has brought about changes ushering us into a time of increased use of the digital media. Presently, many African youths have made credible use of the digital space to develop their civic identities and express opinions in creative ways as much as they can. Currently, the digital space is one of the most effective media through which information can be shared, interaction improved, communication bridged, and engagement enhanced. Social networking sites have become very popular, especially among youths, have created new, exciting, and convenient platforms for young people to exchange information freely with little or no filters. Civil society organizations should explore ways of enlightening youth on how to utilize the digital space for more effective engagement. We must all, especially in the humanitarian and civil society sector, work together to enhance our youth and their capabilities. May I assert here that our investment today will amount to nothing tomorrow if we don't hand over the right generation of people in our youth. Our youth constitute not only the formidable demographic force, but also make up the next generation of parents, workers, and leaders. They can make or mar a nation based on what is programmed in them today. Feedback system, because if garnished with the best available resources, they give a positive outcome. But if otherwise, negative outcomes should be expected. Therefore, the role of African youth is not participated in nation building. As for our dear youth participants, it is needless of me to stress that your future rests firmly in the palm of your hands. Youth should assert the position that youth are not problems to be solved, but problem solvers. African youth, you are the creative force, a royal diadem and dynamic source of innovation. I urge you all to open your minds as we are here to engage in a strategic discourse, ensuring that the African youths have the opportunity for meaningful engagement and effective participation in the development process. Be ready to assimilate the impact of value that our esteemed speakers will impact upon you today. I therefore invite you all to participate in this maiden edition of the Illuminate Africa Youth Conference. I sincerely applaud and appreciate our esteemed speakers and resource persons for making out time from their schedule to be a part of this important discourse. I equally use this opportunity to sincerely thank our partners, as with your support, the Foundation has been able to successfully convene this laudable and noble conference. We look forward to a rewarding and impactful event. May God bless us all in our efforts to institute a Pan-African youth engagement and inclusion in this post-COVID era. Again, I welcome you all as I hereby declare the first edition of the Illuminate Africa Youth Conference 2020 open. Thank you all, and God bless you.
Thank you, madam. for that fantastic presentation and illuminating our minds concerning what this conference is all about, what to expect in detail. Right before we go into inviting our special guest to deliver the opening remarks, I would like to briefly share a story that I experienced some years ago, 2011 to be precise, when I was a guest at a business meeting in the city of Luxembourg. I got into Luxembourg as an African, and as I was about to leave my hotel room, I got the inclination to just take along with me my passport details and my invitation letter. As an African, I was wondering, why do I need to do this? But I took it and I took a walk. About 5 minutes later, or 5 to 10 minutes later, I was a bit tired. So I got to a bus station and was going to take a bus that was going to take me back to my hotel. At that bus station, there were a lot of white Europeans there. And I met a particular young lady who was an American. And she asked me where I was from. And I said I was from Nigeria. And she said she was from the United States. Immediately I said I was Nigerian. A lady standing right in front of me turned around and started screaming insults at me. She said she hated Africans. And she was very clear about the fact that some Africans had duped her sister of some money, and it actually hurt her to her bones. She continued insulting me. And that's when I remembered I had my invitation letter in my pocket. I pulled out the letter and showed it to her, and then she calmed down. And I used that opportunity to educate everybody at that bus station that not all Africans are what you think. You have a lot of creative Africans, you have industrious Africans, you have very exciting Africans ruling different sectors across the globe. I went back to my hotel room and thought about this situation clearly. And it occurred to me that the only reason why this lady decided to insult me at that bus station was because of what she thought about the brand Africa, in particular, the brand Nigeria, which happens to be the most populous Black country in the world. This conference, the Illuminate Africa Youth Conference, has been put together in line with the Africa Youth Charter. The Africa Youth Charter is a framework that was adopted by heads of government from across Africa in 2006 in Banjul to create a strategic implementation framework that can be domesticated by other nations towards the growth, towards the emancipation of the African youth. The first panel we're going to witness today, chaired by the chairman of the AfriGrowth Foundation, helps us to understand what the Africa Youth Charter is all about. Why was it created in the first place? Who are those involved in creating this document, and what did they have in mind? Has it been domesticated in other countries, in most African countries across the continent? To my understanding, only 3 African countries have not signed up to the African Youth Charter, but the rest have. What have their results been so far? What has the experiences been? I believe that at the end of this panel, we'll get to understand at a deeper level what the Africa Youth Charter is all about and how its implementation has been going on across the continent since 2006 when it was signed up in Banjul. I will welcome right now the chairman of the AfriGrowth Foundation. But before I do that, I would welcome the permanent secretary representing the Honorable Minister of Youth and Sports to deliver the opening remarks from the Honorable Minister Sunday Dare. The permanent secretary, sir.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Noah. Your Excellencies, participants, ladies and gentlemen, do I accept that you can all hear me? Can I just see a wave of your hands if you can hear me? Very well, thank you very much. Let me start by thanking most immensely your very good self for inviting us to be part of this very, very laudable meeting, very important meeting. The ministry does not take this lightly in any form, because we think that for us to be able to improve the lot of the Nigerian youth and by and large the African youth, we need a synergized approach to issues. So far, lots of things have been done in silos here and there, and oftentimes we're not able to galvanize these efforts to be able to produce the desired results. And avenues like this help us to reach out some more, coordinate some more, synergize some more, and see how we can indeed improve the lot of the African youth. I listened to Dr. Noel and I heard his experience. Unfortunately, that is an experience that many of our youth have had, and quite a number of us in some other forms, sometimes not directly through harassments, but you even find them at meetings that you have, global meetings that you attend, and in some cases, some try to look down on you, and when they realize the quality you're made of as an individual, then in some cases, they're able to get a change of mind. That matters to us a lot, and I want to thank Noel for not hitting back at that lady with the way she came at him, but rather trying to educate everyone that was at that meeting. That is actually what we should be doing, and I want to thank you for that. Having said that, I'm standing in this afternoon for my Honorable Minister, Mr. Sunday Dare, who is unavoidably absent from this meeting, but who has his heart in this meeting. And if you permit me, the Ministry of Youth and Sport Development is fully committed to youth development in Nigeria, because we believe strongly that the time for the youth is now. They are no longer the future, they are the today. We are dealing with a hashtag generation, and whether we like it or not, a lot of things at this point in time point us in that direction, and these young people must be given the requisite assistance, the requisite environment, the requisite wherewithal for them to be able to express themselves and to push forth their potentials. Because if you'll agree with me that we are seeing a very diversified class of young people like it has never been before. Earlier, the president was speaking and she alluded to what the COVID-19 has come along with and the move to the digital age. The truth of the matter is that it was just a time bomb that was waiting to explode. And what COVID-19 had done is to push this forward, because we now realize our very unlimited capabilities that can of things that can be done on the digital space. And whichever way we look at it, the African youth cannot be left behind, and as such we must key into it with everything that we have. The African Youth Charter is a well-envisioned document that we all must take very seriously. The ministry is taking a very close look at that, but I must also say here that we know that the ministry alone cannot enhance or pursue the full implementation of that in Nigeria, following domestications and all, but that we must all join hands to be able to do that. Having said that, in Nigeria at this moment, we all know that we've had some challenges, especially in the recent past with the EndSARS movement. We cannot just continue and leave it out as if nothing is happening. Well, it is a challenge that we have taken headlong, and we are really trusting that government engagement with the youth will help us to address the very genuine concerns of young Nigerians across the country that were brought forward with the EndSARS movement. And we're hoping that the desired change will come in as quickly as possible. Having said that, the ministry, in recognition of all this, has come up with a new engagement platform that we call the DEAL, D-E-E-L, where D stands for digital skills, because we understand whether we're dealing with the digital age, and then we're at a point where even tailoring today requires some form of digital skills. So we must be able to push that across the length and breadth of sectors in development. The second stands for the empowerment, youth empowerment. And to a large extent, we're moving not only from empowerment, but to investment, because investing in the youth goes beyond just empowerment, head knowledge, and taking them along in this and that. The question is, what are we able to empower them to be able to do for themselves and for the nation? We need to raise entrepreneurs out of them. Government alone cannot provide the needed employment for the mass population of our young people. To a large extent, depending on what statistics you're working with, we're talking of anywhere between 62 to 74% of the population being a youthful, being within that bracket. And that actually is a huge, huge, huge population that we have to deal with. So we're working on several fronts to see how we can further engage them, because an engaged youth is one of the street and is one that can project their potentialities for the benefit of the nation as a whole. It is in that line that we were able to gain approval for the establishment of the Nigerian Youth Investment Fund, amongst many others. And that is a ring-fenced fund that is expected to birth to help these young people birth their ideas. This is the first time we're having a funding in Nigeria that is not only targeted at small and micro businesses of these young people, but we also want to listen to their ideas. What are those things that still exist in their heads that we can actually bring to bear? Recently, Paystack, a Nigerian company, youth-owned company, was sold for $200 million. Now that is a huge one. And we think that there are many, many more Paystacks around in Nigeria, many, many more innovative opportunities by young Nigerians that could actually be brought to bear on national development and our economic growth. And we think that if we provide the environment for them to be able to bring this forth, that will really help the entire cause in the pursuit of this agenda. We also have a second E that stands for employability. We're trying hard to see how we can put together work experience programs for Nigerian youth. And the whole idea is to say that we bridge the gap from classroom to when they begin to take up jobs in various organizations. It is not enough to have the head knowledge. How about giving them an opportunity at practical knowledge? The ministry is working with some blue chip organizations across Nigeria to do that, and a number have already been taken on. This is not the platform for me to begin to delve deep into that, but what I'm doing at this moment is just to shed light on some of the steps we're taking to enhance youth inclusiveness and participation, not only in businesses and socioeconomic growth, but also leadership and good governance. And then we have the L, which stands for leadership. We believe very strongly that this is the time for us to create that environment that will allow for inclusion and full engagement of our youthful population, both in the area of governance, in various forms of leadership, as business leaders, name them. And we feel that this is the time, and for us to do that, we are creating opportunities for them to be able to engage, and then for us to also be able to listen to them and harness these various potentials coming from this youthful population. At this point, government must bend over backwards to accommodate these young people that are, especially the generation hashtag, whether we like it or not. They don't do things the way it was done in the past. This is a digital age. We must embrace the fact that things have changed. We must prepare the African youth for global competitiveness. We must prepare the African youth for them to be able to fit in wherever they find themselves across the globe. And this, to a large extent, is the entire, in a nutshell, is the objective of the African Charter on these young people. The youth agenda must be vigorously pursued for us to do that. Recently, we had the Day of the Girl Child, and where we featured and had some discussions around the challenges and potentials of the girl child. We looked at gender imbalances here and there, all addressing the issue around the youthful growth and the youthful population, the youthful integration of the youth into various arms of governance and what have you. I think it was a very, very enriching one, and one that I think with time we may need to revisit and see how the communiques that were drawn from that particular engagement helps us to move forward with that. So to a large extent, I want to once again, on behalf of my minister, thank the AfriGrowth Foundation for putting this together, for inviting us to be a part of this. And we are sincerely hoping that this wouldn't just be a once-off invite, but that one that will create a path for very, very constructive engagement with the ministry and by and large with the government of Nigeria as we push to improve the lot of the African youth. once again, permit me to convey the very warm regards of the Honorable Minister, Mr. Sunday Dari. I thank you all.
Thank you very much, dear PAMSEC. We welcome you immensely. The AfriGrowth Foundation welcomes you and thanks you for your participation and your inputs. Most of the things you have said definitely will go into the foundation's strategy and technical developments towards youth emancipation in Nigeria and in Africa. Thank you very much, PAMSEC. Warm regards to the Honorable Minister as well. Thank you very much. Thank you. The Africa Youth Charter provides governments across the continent, youth, civil society and international partners to frame on the cities and paves the way for the development of national programs and strategic plans for the empowerment. The key objective of the Youth Charter is to ensure the constructive involvement of youth in the development agenda of Africa and the effective participation in the debates and decision-making processes in the development of the continent. Youth issues in all development policies and programs. It provides a legal basis for ensuring youth presence and participation in government structures, forums at national, regional, and continental levels. The Charter gives an important guideline and places responsibility on member states for the empowerment of youth in key strategic areas. Some of these areas include education and skills development, poverty eradication, socio-economic integration of youth, sustainable livelihoods, and youth employment. Health, peace and security, law, environment, sustainable development, and protection of the environment. It's expected that the execution of these guidelines will not only provide the youth with necessary tools for livelihood, but also stem the flow of Africa's most important resource to other parts of the world. Now, the truth is, Africa has implementation, and that is why this conference has come to the fore at this particular time, at a critical moment in the development of our world. This panel, which I'm about to introduce, would give a deeper insight into why the Africa Youth Charter was created, why it was developed, and how the implementation framework has been going across the continent since its inception in 2006. Our distinguished panel members will throw more light on the implementation strategy of the Africa Youth Charter on a nation-to-nation basis. This panel will be chaired by the chairman of the AfriGrowth Foundation, Ambassador Joe Keshi. On this same panel, you would also have Mrs. Margaret Udo. And before I mention Mrs. Margaret Udo, Ambassador Joe Keshi has been involved deeply with the activities and the successes of this foundation for the past 10 years. Mrs. Margaret Udo, the Vice President of the West Africa Civil Society Forum. Welcome, madam. Mr. Leandro Bannon, Program Officer, Capacity Development, West Africa Civil Society. You're welcome, Mr. Bannon. Mr. Adewale A. Temilei, representing the Permanent Representative, Permanent Mission of Nigeria to the ECOWAS. You're welcome, Mr. Adewale. Farida Keita, Permanent Mission of Nigeria to the ECOWAS. You're welcome, Ms. Farida. Manuel Caxito, Director of the International Exchange Office, representing the Honorable Minister of Youth and Sports, Angola. You're welcome, Julio Caxito. Right about now, I would hand over to the chairman and the moderator of this panel, and the chairman of the AfriGrowth Foundation, Ambassador Joe Keshi. Ambassador, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yes, okay. I'm sorry, I didn't know you were not hearing me. The usual technical issues you have when you're on online meeting. But as I was saying, I was expressing my thanks and gratitude to the permanent secretary representing the minister, and it was really very reassuring to hear all what the ministry is doing in terms of trying to ensure the success of the African Youth, Youth Charter. And I also must thank the president and his team in AfriGrowth Foundation for the wonderful work that they are doing, and indeed for this conference. I think it's really timely, given what we are experiencing, not only in this country, but all over the continent. There is some bits of youth revolt, which we need to bear in mind and find a way to do the best we can to address the issues associated with the teeming army of youths all over the continent. Now, we are about to discuss a document that was put in place, I think, in 2009. There was a program that was launched, the first 10 decades of youth development. That has expired, and only the experts who are here with us will tell us whether it was successful or not. But I also do know that there's a 5-year plan, action plan for African directed on empowerment. And so this afternoon, our panel will engage on the journey so far. And I'm going to invite all the participants. We have barely just about 30 minutes to do this, beginning with Mrs. Margaret Udo, Vice President, West Africa. I'll be grateful if you can tell us from your own perspective, from your own view, how far have we gone with, have countries gone with the implementation of the African Youth Charter? And indeed, I would also want other members of the panel, as we discuss this, let's also zero in on the role of civil society in ensuring the implementation of the document. So, Mrs. Margaret Udo, I welcome you. And again, I repeat the question, what's your perspective on the journey so far? Is she on? It's Margaret with us. It's Margaret with us. Margaret, if you are with us, signify so that we can. Okay. While we are waiting for Margaret, I believe that Mr. Bannon is with us. Mr. Bannon, can you?
Yes, Ambassador. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Please, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm hearing you.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much for the opportunity for inviting us. I mean, my organization, WACSI, West Africa Civil Society Institute, which is a regional institute for civil society across the region. So our work has been supporting civil society, both operationally and institutionally, for them to be effective and resilient in the work that they have been doing. And some of them include, issue related to this document. It's not the only instrument that the African Union has enacted. We have, various other instruments that have been ratified, that civil society have been engaging in various, parties involved to ensure the effective implementation of this instrument. So coming back to the African Youth Charter, which has been into existence for more than 10 years now. 10 years is a quite long period. I mean, if you have to look at the number of years that our government or president are supposed to be in power, for most of the Anglophone country is 8 years. Francophone country is 10 years. So we are assuming that within that period, there should be some tangible results. And if that is expected from our president or executive, levels, we should also expect this kind of results, within that time framework from an instrument, a key instrument such as the African Youth Charter, especially looking at, the high percentage of youth and within the populations, African populations. Now, in terms of achievement, what has happened, we looking at, events, the current development in the region, we can clearly see that no much has happened related to, for example, youth empowerment, including social, cultural, or economic rights, and also related to the civil and political rights and these aspects. And when with what we saw recently in Liberia and what is currently going on in Guinea, Cote d'Ivoire, and just to mention few of them. And when you have seen the excessive forces or excessive, forces that our police have been using on youth who are on the street demanding for a better government and want a job, who are channeling their aspirations. And there are various reasons for that, for us not seeing, much tangible result in terms of the implementation. The first one, should I go ahead? Okay. So the first one is related to the lack of, should I say it, accountability mechanism from the African Union, Commission itself. And looking at, for example, set up a mechanism to ensure, for example, there is we receive updates at national level from every country on annual basis, for example, on implementation of the framework. So we all know that nothing gets done when there is no accountability. And but we must also commend the fact that we have few countries, apart from ratifying the charter, they have taken initiative at country level, and some of them, maybe Ghana, for example, they even have a national youth policy here in Ghana that is in place. You also have Mali, for example, that even have set up a national youth council to channel the aspirations and demand of youth, even though that platform has been so politicalized. The politicians want to hijack that platform. So at the end of the day, it's not playing its roles. And the other element of, for not working effectively, we also talked about, even the process of involving the youth itself, and especially looking at the setup of institutions. In most of our country, we have this kind of, we call it youth ministry, or ministry in charge of youth affairs in various countries. But you will see that the person even in charge of it is is no longer a young person, is older than 35 per the African Union definition of youth. And also, we also have the lack of the capacity, even capacity at various levels, operational, even technical, to even implement and that instrument to try to cascade it at country level. And of course, the major key aspect also for that, also insufficient funding that have been directed to issue or program or initiative targeting youth at country level. So I will not focus much on some of the reason of the issues, why it's not working, that we all are much mindful about it, but I will much more dive into what we need to do in terms of way forward or solutions. So one of them, for example, is to have the African Unions could explore, for example, an accountability mechanism that every country that have ratified that charter should submit on annual basis an update, a report update on the implementation of the framework. And all the other solution could be engaging governments, at national levels, and for them to invest more in youth development. So there is a need to have that political will. We don't need to have issue before we respond to. I just listened to our honorable minister, the representative minister of youth in Nigeria. Some of the initiatives they have is very brilliant, but it should not be in response to the situation that has happened recently. It should have been there for a long time, and ensuring that is consistent in terms of implementation of that. But of course, the blame also, some of the blame also goes to, to the youth. We need to be more organized and more united, using various innovative ways. And for us to not waiting for elections, no, we should not be, focusing on the election cycles, but we need to auto-organize ourselves. And some of the agencies that can guide that process could be civil society organization working on this thematic or this issue can bring voice together, and for, based on that, we are more stronger and we can speak louder. So there is a need for coordinations, of course, and even among civil society, not only at country level, but also beyond country. And so it seems that most of our interventions are quite scattered. So there is a need for more coordinated intervention. And more importantly, not only government and not only civil society, but private sector also, they also have their role to play in terms of empowering youth. And because at the end of the day, when there's an issue, we are all affected. For example, I talk much about what happened recently in Nigeria when you have private property that were destroyed and all that. So it means that it's an issue that we should all be concerned of. So get involved in terms of empowering youth, giving them what they want in terms of, creating a conducive environment for them to have job, get relevant skills, adapting our education system to the need of the job market. And for us at WACSI, we in that respect, in terms of initiative, we have tried to, we have designed a couple of initiatives targeting young people across the region, West Africa. Some of them is to give, for example, experience to fresh graduates who are interested in civil society sector. So when you are fresh graduate with that, so we give you the platform to come and work with us for 6 months for you to get that relevant experience and skills that can help you land a job. And why not also, continue working with us. And we also had other initiatives that include also research fellowship for youth, young people who are in the academia. We give them opportunity to come and spend 3 months within our facility in terms of provide them relevant support and for them to do their work. And we also have general mentoring, or peer mentoring, intergenerational mentoring system that we have been running. So just to conclude, I would say that, and we have seen much initiative centered on security issues. For us, security issue, terrorism, all that are some of the effects of not taking decision, of not dealing with the causes. And some of the causes is not excluding youth. And when you see most of our, constitutions say that you need to be 40 or to run for several positions. We have seen young people coming together in Nigeria try to reduce that, which has worked perfectly. And thanks to the political will of the current government to accept that initiative of not too young to run. And so for us, focusing on security is good. Of course, without stability, there cannot be development. But as much as possible, we should also look at the causes, which are unemployment of youth, and also their participations, and so on and so forth. And also the institutions, democratic institutions, governance institutions that are in place for them to be able to channel their interest, to respect their rights. For example, the charter talked about the freedom of participation, associations, and speech, and all that. Is it happening in the regions? For most of the case, it's difficult for us now. We are having the civic space that is very, very close, and to make it difficult for citizens and everyone to express their view on key issue pertaining to their life. So government must listen to the youth. Otherwise, when youth get frustrated, it can easily distract on the whole system, or whatever that we have in sentence. I would say that we cannot become the African that we want unless we invest. We invest actually massively in the youth.
Hello, Mr. Banner, can you hear me? Could you just round up so that I can bring in a few others, given the time we have?
Sure. So I was, okay, just to round up, I was saying that, I mean, we as Africans, we cannot become or have the Africa that we want unless we invest massively in youth, I mean, social and economic and cultural development, while ensuring that some of our fundamentals are in place, for example, respect for civil and political rights. So this is my last point. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Let me bring in Mr. Adewale from ECOWAS. Mr. Adewale, I'm sure that you heard all what Mr. Bannon said, particularly the lack of accountability at the AU level, the fact that there's been no significant progress on the youth charter. There are few limited, actions at the state level, national level. But at the end of the day, I think I liked this last comment, which was the fact that there's a need for significant investment in youth. He also talked of political will. So, Mr. Adewa.
Yes, sir. I'm with you, Your Excellency.
Yes, so I would like to where do we go from here? If after more than many years now, we have such a beautiful and action. In your view,
Sorry, I didn't get the question.
I said,
completely,
I'm
sir.
sure you heard all what Mr. Bannon said,
Yes,
and I'm
sir.
saying that after so many years, significantly nothing much has happened. In a few countries, there have been policies and I'm saying to move the whole subject forward.
Okay. All right. I get to
What
know,
are
Your
the
Excellency.
things we should be doing
Yes,
in Africa to ensure
okay.
of the African Youth Charter?
Okay.
5 minutes, you have 5 minutes.
Thank
Can everybody hear him? Unmute your system so that we can hear you.
All right. Okay. Can everyone hear me now?
Yes, please.
Okay.
5 minutes.
All right. My name once again is Adewale Adeyemi, and I'm sitting in for Ambassador Musa Sani Nuhu, the permanent representative of Nigeria to ECOWAS. He, who, due to exigencies of duty, could not make it into this meeting. I also want to appreciate the conveners of this meeting for this very lofty idea of bringing relevant stakeholders together to seek a way forward on how the youths can remain relevant and be a part of the developmental process for Africa as a whole, as a continent. And also, before I go on, I would have to respectfully pay respect to Ambassador Joe Keshi. People like us only get to read and hear about him after he had left. We joined the ministry after he had left so many years. So it's a privilege listening to him right now and seeing him and being a part of the meeting that he also is. Your Excellency, I appreciate you so much. So I haven't said that. And building on the earlier comments of the participant that spoke earlier, I think so many things. There is no doubt. There is no doubt about the fact that the youth of any continent or of any region is an integral part of their developmental process. And it is not in doubt also that the African Union as an organization has come to that to that understanding. As it is, African Union has a lot of instruments, a lot of documents that buttresses the fact that they already come to the understanding of the integral part or integral role that the youths have to play in the developmental process of Africa. But even despite these instruments, despite the several documents that we have that are supposed to chart the course for how the youth will be a part of the development process of Africa, things are still not the way we are supposed to. They are supposed to be. We have a lot, like the earlier the speaker who spoke earlier alluded. There are a lot of recent happenings that goes to show that the youth are not yet integrated into the system. In most of the African countries, the youth are still very, very isolated from the system of process of governance, the process that leads to development, and the process that leads to entrenching them in bringing up, expressing their potentials in their society, in their various societies. So, like Ambassador asked now, what are we supposed to be doing? Now, when we look at the charter that we are considering today, the African Youth Charter. Now, we all know, as we all know, and as Mrs. Dio also made mention in opening remarks, the articles 26, 27, and 28 of that charter, actually stipulates the implementation process of the charter, and it places it in the hands of three major players. The first being the youths themselves, the second being the state parties to the charter, and the third being the sub-regional and regional organizations. So what it means is that in integrating or in making the youth relevant in the process of development in Africa, the youths have a role to play. The state parties to the AYC, the African Youth Charter, has a role to play, and also the regional organizations such as ECOWAS and other ones, SADC, COMSA, and as many that have roles to play at their own level to ensure that these the things that are spelled out in the provisions of the African Union, African Youth Charter is well implemented. So now, if we have this document and things are not working, I think the very first thing we should do is to go back to the mode of implementation. What has been placed in the hands of the implementers as their responsibility, and what are they doing? Are they doing otherwise? Are they doing it right? So if they are not doing it right, are we going to rejig the process of implementation, or are we going to have to rewrite even the charter itself? But I think those are not the problems. I think the major problem that we have is the fact that and maybe before I go on, let me just state that I would like to focus on the role of the regional and sub-regional organizations, since I'm coming from the ECOWAS perspective. So I'm going to, if you just permit me, I'll just mention one or two roles or responsibilities that the charter itself spelled out for regional organizations to do as part of their contribution to the implementation of the charter. And one of it says that they are supposed to collaborate with governmental and non-governmental institutions as well as developmental partners to identify best practices on youth policy, formulation and implementation, and encourage the adaptation of principles and experiences among state parties. It also stipulates that these regional bodies must invite state parties to include youth representatives as part of their delegation to ordinary sessions of the African Union. There's also the one that says that they must institute measures to create awareness of their activities and make information on its activities. Now, we can go on and on with this responsibility that the Charter has placed in the hands of regional bodies, but coming down to ECOWAS, I can also start reeling out to you, but because of time, I can reel out to you most of the youth projects or youth empowerment projects that ECOWAS have been doing over the years, and I can tell you that they are very laudable programs. They are very laudable ideas that they are doing to push the youth to the forefront in the various member states of ECOWAS. But then, are they not deviating? I think that what they are doing, what these organizations are doing, they are only running independent programs that are isolated from the stipulated mandates of the Charter. Now, there are certain things that has to come together to be able to achieve what the Charter stipulates. So when we are not getting the results that we want from the Charter, when we are not getting the right reflections that we want from the youth in our continent, in our countries, then let us go back to how it is being implemented. Are we implementing it according to the responsibility that has been placed in the hands of the implementers? Now, for the regional and sub-regional bodies, what are they doing? Are they doing according to the stipulations of the Charter to ensure that now what I think is that for a start, these sub-regional organizations should be able to come together and align whatever projects, whatever contributions they are making to implement the AYC. They have to be a synergy between what each of them are doing all across the regions. Let us come together, let them come together, and let them know that what we are implementing here is what Ghana is implementing, is what Nigeria is implementing, is what Cote d'Ivoire is implementing. And then when we have a uniform process of implementing or bringing the youth into the system of development, then we have a pattern that we are going through, and we can follow it through to a logical conclusion. But when this sub-regional organization starts to pursue independent projects, start to isolate whatever they are doing from the larger picture of the AU Charter, it drags us back. It slows the pace of the level at which we want the youth to be a part of the developmental process in Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And given what you have said, and I like some of the observations you have made. So I want to bring in all the way from Angola, Mr. Kaxito. And Mr. Kaxito, I'm sure you've heard two contributions, one from Nigeria, one from ECOWAS. Both of them expressing some concerns that not a lot has been done, to meet the expectations of the African Youth Charter. We would like you to tell us what's going on in Angola. Are you all in Angola implementing the Charter, and within your region? If you can do that for us in about 6 minutes, we will really appreciate it. If you just tell us what is Angola doing to implement the African Youth Charter. Yeah. Is he on? Is he on? Mr. Kaxito, can you hear me? Huh? Is that online? Well, we seem to have lost him, but I'm told that Mrs. Margaret Udo is back with us. Am I right on that? Madam Margaret Udo, are you with us? They finished? Yeah. Well, look, we had Mr. Kizito a few minutes ago. I could say his name on the platform. But let me just say, go back to Mr. Bannon, if you are there. Farid, okay. Farida Kaite, if you are there, let me ask you perhaps the last question before we bring this to an end. You've heard all what has been said so far on the issue. There are concerns being expressed that really the reality is that not much has been done, and I'm sure you heard that. But I want to focus on an issue that is also very paramount in the document that we are discussing: empowerment of African youth. In your own opinion, Farida, tell us the best way we can empower the youths in the continent.
Okay, thank you, Your Excellency. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, thank you for giving me the floor. In terms of your question, I believe the previous speakers have highlighted on these issues. I think that the best way to is just inclusion of the youth in everything that we're used to be heard. If we include them in terms
Yeah, but even I can't hear Farida.
terms of our policy making, if we are happening, I believe that they went.
Farida, can you hear us?
Yes, sir. My mic went off.
Okay, all right. We are hearing you.
Yes, sir. I was saying that the government should also take a proactive approach in terms of conducting studies early on, so that we know where the youth can be placed. In terms of employment, in terms of what the previous speaker said, businesses, since we have a large number of youth, our employment we cannot hire everyone. So we can just maybe conduct studies of where to place them early on in terms of child education and development. So from primary school, we can start sensitizing them, okay, on the areas that they should focus on, where their skills will be best accommodated. So also the private sector would do well to would play a large role in this aspect. They can also let the government know, and also the education system, Ministry of Education, where they feel, what areas they feel the youth and children should develop on, and what areas they feel like they can best impact the society and also their organizations as well.
All right, thank you very much. That's very interesting. I hope I'll find time to make a comment on that. I hear that we have Mr. Kizito from Angola. If you can hear me, the question I pose to you if you can, in 5 minutes, tell us exactly what the situation is like in Angola. It's Angola implementing the African Youth, or exactly where are you?
Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you.
My name is Yolanda. My English is bad.
None of us speak Portuguese.
Now, but my colleague Cachito Inuime, present in conference, but I speak Portuguese, only Portuguese or Spanish.
Go ahead. Your English is very good. Manage.
But I write for you, yes. In Matpapu.
Yeah, go on, let's hear you.
Good, okay. You can call in my colleague.
Okay, put your colleague on. Let your colleague join us.
Sorry?
If your colleague is there, let him or her join us.
It's okay. I write for you.
I have joined Mrs. Margaret Tudor.
Okay, Mrs. Margaret Tudor, I propose a question.
I'm sorry, I was not given the right link. So all along I've been hearing you guys, but I couldn't come in.
Yes, no problem. But the question I asked, which I had asked before is, the African Charter contains a lot of beautiful things that can be done to help youths, all over the continent. The last speaker talked of inclusion in investment in youth and the role of the private sector, the role of government, and so on. But I'm still concerned about how do we empower the youth? What is the best way? I'm looking for that answer that says to you, this is what you need to do, government. Say to the government, this is what you need to do, and it will work effectively to bring in the youth, either as a form of inclusion or as a form of empowerment. What is missing in all this conversation?
I think what is missing is the foundation of the youth. First of all, let me go a little into what I do. We carry out, my organization, we close holistic development gaps in children and individuals, particularly the children and youth. If you do not prepare their background well and equip them properly, they cannot come out to be relevant and do whatever we want to do. Somebody talked about job. We don't have jobs. So the education system has to be reconsidered to be what we call talent-based education, where children are discovered. Our children must be discovered to be able to put them in the right track of their life. So the education should be inclusive and holistic. There should be a training of the teachers on how to bring out the propensities in children. And that's what we do. So that you don't waste time to teach these children what they are not good at. So if we have the proper holistic and inclusive education, which is not only the education of the school and the teacher, education that incorporates everybody that has contact with that child. You cannot bring up children in the school to go back to meet illiterate parents at home. So that education will not be functional. So when we talk about functional education, the project starts from the beginning. Whatever is taught to children is what we call abstract. Let this abstract be turned into what we call reality, so that the child understands his relationship with the environment, in health, in everything, so that whatever a child does will end up, how can my life be improved with this knowledge? And how can it help me to put food on the table? So we bring up entrepreneurs. We bring up children that can think. Subjects like critical thinking, creative thinking should be introduced into the system. So if we don't do these things, we have not started. So that the foundation matters, inclusive and holistic education.
Thank you very much, Madam. I think you've actually nailed it, and I can say I agree a lot with you. Let me just share this with you all. Growing up as a young man or as a youth, my generation, we only had one message from our parents. Our parents were not rich. Many of them were neither here or there, but they did one thing. They kept telling my generation that we only have one thing to give you, and that is education. And today, the generation that is aging, my generation that is aging, the only empowerment we had in life was education. And that education opened up the doors for us in so many ways. It was that education that led us on the journey that many of us took, different journeys to what we became at the end of the day and to who we are today. I still think, in my view, that as Margaret has said, one of the best ways, if not the best way, to really empower the youth and set them on a trajectory that is almost irreversible, as we experience, is education. And that education must cut across board. Just don't leave, nobody should be left behind. My generation, we had trade schools. If you cannot make it up to the university, or you cannot make it to the polytechnic as it was in those days, you went to trade school, where you were trained as a craft person, and a lot of them actually turned out to be, very successful in life. But that said, I think everybody was right in one or two things. Number one, government must invest in education, because in investing in education, you are also investing in youth. Number two, and Margaret made it very clear too, parents have a role to play in this. And number three is the private sector. But before you talk about the private sector, government also has a responsibility of ensuring that you create the environment that would allow the private sector to grow and expand. As long as the private sector expands, there will be a lot of jobs for the younger ones, and that will definitely take care of quote and unquote youth empowerment, in the sense that getting a job, working diligently, growing up the ladder is part of the empowerment you receive from expanding the economy. But I know that quite a number of people refer to inclusion. Very often, people talk of politics and so on. I also agree that you must open up the political space. But look, here's the deal for me. I think in opening up the political space, youth should be realistic enough to ask a simple question: where do I start from? The first place you start from is getting involved, getting engaged. Make sure you become part of the process. Don't just get up one day and say you are going to contest for the presidency when you have not even contested for local government and prove your worth. So there are so many places. Even becoming a member, being active in civil society organizations as we are doing today is part of what youth can do to build up themselves, to develop themselves, and to grow up. After all, I'm sure many of you remember, that if you look at the life of President Obama, he actually was a youth organizer. He was a community organizer for crying out loud, until he began to grow in that led eventually to the presidency. So there are a lot of routes that the youth can follow in their growth and development. But as I said, this is not a conversation that we can completely, take care of today, because another panel is set to go. But I think that we've had a fantastic and interesting conversation, and we should keep the conversation going until we all can agree on the best way to ensure that youths receive their due recognition in the society, and that they become part and parcel of the growth and development of the society. I see, Madam Margaret, you are raising up your hand. I just give you 2 seconds if you can.
Okay. I want to apologize that I had no time to talk about WhatsApp. The next time I'll talk about it. And that also, I want to tell you that it's not the youth that will create space for themselves. Because actually this generation of speed and technology is for the youth. So let the adults and the elders and the leaders pave way to them, bring them in to be part of the change process. Because as you are talking, most of our elders, their children are not in this country. So if they don't experience the needs of the country, then how will they be part of it? So it is the role of the parents and the elders and everybody to bring in the youth, not the youth jumping into positions. So that's what I wanted to say.
Yeah, thank you. No, I did not say the youth should jump into positions. On the other hand, I think I actually suggested that the youth needs to grow into positions.
We need to prepare them.
And no, yes, you're right. That's what I started by saying. What our parents did for us from day one was to ensure that we got education. Again, I make the point very clear. Many of them were not rich, but they told you quite frankly to your face, education is the key to success in life. And for us to empower the youth, government must create that environment that allows youth to be very educated across the board. Whether in technology, in any field at all, we need to focus on ensuring that the investment on youth should be on education. Whatever else you want to do, let's begin with education. And so I want to thank each and every one of you. And I invite the MC to take us to the next panel. I think that's the second panel, effective use of the digital space. And this will zero into what Madam Margaret is discussing with me. Thank you very much all, and it's been a fantastic conversation.
Very much, Ambassador. It was a fantastic panel, and I thank all the panelists who contributed to making it a success. Like I've always said, Africa has never lacked policymakers. Africa has never lacked policy documents. Africa has always lacked leaders who would implement these policies from the depths of their heart. Africa has lacked leaders who mean what they say and take up policies that they know would affect the generality of the public and execute on them in spite of whose axe is God. I thank again Ambassador Jokeshi, the chairman of the panel, and everybody else who has participated in the panel. And I will just go on to introduce the next panel, which has to deal with the effective use of digital space for youth engagement, social media, interactive and informative web platforms. Some weeks ago, I woke up to the news of a coming together of some youths to protest something regarding SARS, which is the Special Anti-Robbery Squad of the police force in Nigeria. And I'll use the Nigerian example in this case to introduce this panel. SARS, as we know it, has been involved in a lot of infractions concerning the Nigerian people. There have been a lot of deaths, there have been a lot of maimings, a lot of wrongdoings from that group of the police force. And initially, a group of youth decided to hit the streets and make their voices heard. But as they did that, they mobilized a huge number of youths across the country that reverberated across the continent. I started receiving reports from my friends in other African countries talking about what is happening in Nigeria and how it's affecting their own livelihood in their own countries, and how their police force in their countries have been reacting to what is happening in Nigeria. Quite unfortunately, currently being denied by the federal government of Nigeria, but that investigation is still ongoing. A number of youths were killed at the Lekki toll gate, and there has been claims and counterclaims on how many people died, or if anybody died. That issue is still being discussed as we speak. But that movement was successful because of the power of social media. Youths showed that for the very first time, they could agglomerate, they could come together, pull resources together to get fantastic things done. They put resources together, they put money together, they called themselves together, and they poured out into the streets to express themselves critically concerning issues that they felt were pertinent to their growth and development going forward. African youths are not stupid. They know what is happening across the globe. They want a better life. They want to live better. And social media has bridged the divide. African youths now easily see what it's like to live a good life outside of Africa. So that they want the same thing in Africa, and they are demanding those changes right now. So in this panel, we're going to be discussing the effective use of digital media. Yes, digital media has its disadvantages, but it also has immense advantages. And I welcome the panelists we're going to be having today to discuss this critical issue. Mr. Gbenga Shoshan is the Executive Director of Paradigm Initiative. And I've heard a lot about him before today, and it's a pleasure meeting him on this platform. Hello, Gbenga. Nice meeting you. I will give you the floor immediately to first of all tell us what you've been doing, leveraging on digital media, to impact the lives of youth across not just Nigeria, but in Africa as a whole. So I'll just let you come in now. So you would give us one or two ideas about how your organization has leveraged this platform going forward. Then we'll begin to look at it from a holistic perspective. Gbenga, over to you.
All right, thank you. So let me start with the story of Famous. Famous, like many young people in Nigeria, went through primary school. He was lucky. He went through secondary school, and that was where the luck stopped. His parents told him bluntly, you live in Ajegunle. Here, your younger brother, your younger sister, other family members, everybody needs to get at least primary school and secondary school education. And so at this point, OYO, you are on your own. But Famous had heard his friends talk about a program that we started at Paradigm Initiative in 2007 called the LIFE program. LIFE is acronym for Life Skills, ICT Skills, Financial Readiness, and Entrepreneurship Skills. He came to that program. At the time, it was a 4-week program. It is now a 10-week intensive program. Famous finished the program, he paid attention, he excelled, literally. And so when the UK Deputy High Commission, the Trade and Investment Unit asked us, I'd done some work with them, and then they asked us to introduce a few young people they could, interview for an internship. Famous went there, and the one thing that made Xavier get that job was Excel, Microsoft Excel. Because he knew spreadsheets, he knew how to take complex documents, put them in a spreadsheet. Instead of taking a calculator, he knew how to drag and get the answer before somebody will punch 10 things. But the story didn't stop there. While he was there, Famous found out that there was an entry clearance officer position at the UK High Commission in Abuja. When he asked me, my advice was, maybe you shouldn't apply for it because he didn't have a university degree. But of course, we had taught them to be bold, so he applied. To cut the long story short, even though Famous would tell you that, even if he didn't get a job, it was fine. They sent a car to his house to pick him up from Ajegunle, took him to the airport. He flew in an airplane for the first time in his life because he knew how to use a computer, because he learned how to use Excel. He got a job, to cut the long story short. And guess what? After a few months, Famous resigned. We were all confused. What's going on here? But he knew what he wanted. He saved enough money. I think it was 80,000 naira or something he was paid. This was 2007, 2008. So you can imagine what 80,000 naira was. He resigned, went to school. As I speak to you, Famous is not just a graduate of, medical biochemistry from, he's not just a graduate. He now works for one of the top 4 professional services firms in the world here in Lagos, where I am today, and he's won innovation awards for the last 4 years consecutively. Why have I told this story? There are millions of famouses across Nigeria. These famouses are just looking for an opportunity to get connected to digital opportunities. It hurts. It is painful when I see Desmond Elliott, Lai Mohammed, the National Security Advisor, and other government officials focus on the negatives of technology. Of course, any platform can be used to spread anything. Radio has been used before, TV has been used, the internet is being used. Anything that is a medium of expression will be used to express the sentiment of society. If you see a lot of hate in it, it is not the platform, it is the society. So the millions of famouses, there are only a few that we can reach through our own programs. And we're glad, we now have, centers in Aba, in Kano, in Lagos, and we work in 15 schools across Nigeria. And now we have a digital component of it. But the irony is that the digital component of our program is only accessible to those who are connected. There are millions who do not have devices, that when you buy devices for them, their parents will be the one to use the devices. And it makes sense. If I'm a 17-year-old who gets a free mobile phone from a program run by an NGO, and my father needs the phone to be able to run his business, to make more money so that we can eat, it can make a good argument to take the phone away from me. But that's one side of the work that we do. We must empower our young people to not just get technology training, but also for them to get exposure to what is possible. The second side of our work is in terms of policy, and that's why I feel very pained when I see that many African countries promote a climate of fear instead of a climate of innovation. A president of one of the African countries, and I shared a panel at the World Economic Forum once, and when everybody was talking about technology and things like that, he leaned over and asked me a question, and he said, "Oh, by the way, all of you young people from Africa, you're always shouting and talking about tech this, tech that, we protested, we questioned government, but none of you is like Mike Zuckerberg. None of you is like Bill Gates. Where are the Mark Zuckerbergs of Africa?" And as a polite African man, a young African man that I am, I also leaned over and said politely to Mr. President that, sir, the Bill Gates, potential Bill Gates and potential Mark Zuckerbergs in your country are all in jail because they made comments on social media, they expressed their political opinion, and you jailed them, and nobody becomes Bill Gates in a kind of environment that you have created in your country. And unfortunately, this is where Africa needs to make a decision. Are we going to consider where, we've got the likes of all colleagues who are very comfortable with holding on to power, and they see everything, including social media, as opposition, and they're so disconnected from the reality of their citizens that it is only what their special advisors tell them that they believe? How on earth does a president in a country where young people have been shot at, even if none of them died, how do you make a statement to your citizens and say that you will not say anything about that incident until you have been briefed? That is the kind of disconnection that we see. But the good news with technology is that technology has done 3 things to young Africans. Number 1, technology has exposed them to what is possible. Gone are the days when you could say, I build good roads. When you build good roads, that is not the only thing democracy and governance is about. Governance is about the infrastructure above the ground, which includes intellectual capital. What is the average young person in our schools becoming today? I'm an employer of labor, and I can tell you how sad it is that many times when we release calls for application, there are so many people who apply that are literally unemployable. That is what exposure will make you do. It will make you make more demands. It's the reason why you have a lot of youth-led organizations, 1 or 2 of them also on this call, who are leading change in their own way because they've seen what it means like to do this in other places. That's number 1, exposure. Number 2 is knowledge. In spite I should know. I mean, I've been in the ICT sector in Nigeria, and I've had, my chances to work with one or two governments for a while. And I can tell that in spite of the inability of government to understand and provide adequate policy environments for young people, we have the likes of Paystack, which was just in the news as having been sold for $200 million. Very soon there will be a newspaper advert or a major government official will say, "Oh, we our young Nigerians have made us proud," and things like that. When African governments claim young Africans who make success in spite of your retrogressive policies, then it's a big, of a shame scenario. So apart from exposure and knowledge that helps young people build, the third thing that we've seen as an opportunity through technology is that technology has allowed young people organize. Many people will look at the last 3 weeks and talk about how, people will use it to mobilize for protests and things like that. But I say, look above, look a little below that surface and look at how people mobilized resources. And this is not the first time it has happened. When people literally are looking for how to support their colleagues and things like that, the online platforms that are also under attack from many governments are the same platforms that have been used to fix the problems that, are left because of the gaps in government, because of government inefficiency. So in an ideal scenario, if someone gets shot, it's bad enough that they get shot in a protest, which is annoying. But if that happens, you should not need to go on Twitter to ask for people to organize ambulances, which is what happened. My office is, we have offices in 6 countries across the continent, and the story is literally the same. We have a generation of young people. I heard, Mrs. Wood was saying this earlier, and also Ambassador Keshi talking about how young people need to take on responsibility and begin, apart from the fact that, as a generation before them, you need to lay a foundation for them, they also need to take responsibility. It is true. And I like that. And we see this happen across the entire continent, where young people literally know that they are OYO, as they say in Nigeria, on your own. They know they are on their own, but technology has provided an opportunity for them. I mean, look at Famous. He's literally left the bottom of the pyramid. And it's not just Famous. Let me end by telling the story of Ogochukwu. Ogochukwu is one of the students that also joined our training program. If you're from South, in fact, if you're from Nigeria, you will understand the story. Ogochukwu's father has 3 daughters, and at some point, he told the mother and the 3 daughters, "Get out of my house. You, this woman, you have not been able to give me a boy." Now, not forgetting that it takes 2 to make a child. It is X and Y chromosome, right? It takes 2. So if you don't have a boy, it is also half your responsibility. But he chased them out. Ogochukwu came to our program, completed it, got a job, became the breadwinner, and this man is, our father had the effrontery to then come to the mother and say, "Okay, I was wrong. You can now come back," because he saw money. Ogochukwu's story tells me the story of many young Africans. In spite of the environments that people operate in, technology has become an opportunity to get exposure, to learn, and to effectively build the things that many of our governments have failed to build. I'll leave it here for now.
Thank you very much, Benga. Leveraging on what you just said, when you mentioned Paystack, I would like to elaborate a little on that, because I think most governments across Africa fail to realize that there's a difference between wealth creation and poverty alleviation. A lot of governments focus on just poverty alleviation alone and don't realize that they need to empower the private sector, which has the greatest potential to create jobs, and which has the greatest potential to create wealth as well. So what would you like to see the lack of the right policy implementation strategies from governments, concerning wealth creation as a tool to empower the youth across Africa? How have they been able, how can they put the right infrastructure in place? How can they train the right people? How can they empower the right people and place them in the right positions so that they can get the best out of them? Because like I said in my opening, Africa is heading to a population boom. 2050, 2.5 billion projected, 400 million in Nigeria alone. And if we haven't empowered the people that would be alive at that time, that will be the youths in their generation, we're going to have a quagmire in our hands. So what do you think governments should be looking at right now? How can they take their eyes away from just poverty alleviation schemes and focus on putting infrastructure in place that would create wealth amongst the teeming youths of the African population? I'll give you the floor again.
Thank you. Okay, so I mean, we have an assumption between the two of us here that many governments actually want to eradicate poverty or even go as far as creating wealth. I mean, from what we've seen with many governments across Africa, I think many of them actually deliberately, promote policies that keep people poor. That's a new definition entirely for pro-poor. Pro-poor policies are supposed to be helpful to take the poor out of poverty, but it has been redefined by many African governments as keep them poor. If you keep them poor, then you can give them Indomie noodles during elections and they can vote for you and keep you perpetually in power until you die and your son replaces you. But I think that the basic minimum that needs to be done is that for governments that have seen some level of traction from young people, and I know this because I work with many classes of young people across the continent, and in spite of lack of finance for what they do, in spite of a terrible miseducation system, and I say miseducation because many people who go into education institutions across Africa today go in, some of them go in with ideas and come out with desperation. Oh my God, how do I get a job? Which is not education, actually, it's miseducation. The least that you can do is when you begin to see signs of young people making moves by themselves, get out of their way. Don't kill the innovation with policies. And understand this, anywhere in the world, not just in Africa, policy almost always lags behind innovation. The internet will not have been what we think, what we're seeing today if, governments in North America and Europe are done some of the fears, done some of the things that they could have done because of fear of not understanding the networks, and things like that. So we can understand when, for example, a civil aviation authority in a country bans drones because they don't understand that the power of drone technology can actually help you map cities, can actually help you deliver drugs and blood to people on time. So if you don't, the basic minimum governments can do is to get out of the way of young people. They are finding their way already. So get out of the way and let them find their way. And then you can come behind them and support them. But I think the second level is also to make sure that the basic minimum in terms of infrastructure, I said to people that one of the reasons why cities like Lagos, like Nairobi, one of the reasons why cities like that thrive, it's not actually really because of the continued relevance of government policy. It is because infrastructure that is enabled by businesses and has survived many generations is available and attracts more talent. When I finished from OAU Ife, for example, in Osun State in Nigeria, I just packed my bags and came straight to Lagos. I literally putting a lead on the growth of my career. So I came straight to Lagos. And the reason for that is because of the many opportunities. I think this, and for this one, I want to go subnational here. This is an opportunity for subnational governments to start competing with the centers. Kaduna State, Ekiti State, when we began to talk of infrastructure, Ekiti State announced immediately a reduction in right of way. Right of way is what a company needs to pay for them to be able to lay fiber optic cable. Ekiti State in Nigeria immediately announced, we reduce it to 145 naira per meter, per kilometer. When Kaduna State heard that, Kaduna State said, guess what? 0 naira per kilometer. Just come and lay the cable. Because this is the kind of competition that can happen at the subnational level that can help us create infrastructure. I said to people that if you have bread, which is food, cheap food, bed, cheap accommodation, broadband, which is cheap infrastructure. A few of my friends add boost to it, but I don't drink, so I don't add that to it. But if you've got those three factors settled in any city, you will find a major influx of young people into that city. What that will do is you have literally created a cluster for innovation. They will pay taxes when they earn money. Now, reality is that as soon as somebody announces, there's a joke from a recent Big Brother event in Nigeria. The guy who won, I don't remember his name now, the guy, the next day, Lagos State government and Ogun State government, Lekon, yes, sent a tweet to him, congratulating him for winning 85 or something like that million naira, and then reminding him that he has a duty to pay taxes. When governments promote policies that allow the deployment of last mile infrastructure, you benefit. And I think that myopia that allows governments to keep their people poor is the reason why politicians are always under pressure. They will tell you, oh, my people are always disturbing me. That's why I need to get paid more. If you fix the problem, nobody will disturb you. If policies are right, nobody will send you letters and say, get my son a job because I know you. So the minimum that can be done, get out of their way. The next is for subnational governments to begin to compete with one another. Let Kisumu compete with Nairobi. Let Ekiti compete with Lagos. Let Windhoek be given a run for its money by another city or even village. And what we will see is that many young people who run to cities and then overpopulate those cities. I mean, look at every African major city. It's overpopulated. It's the reason we have health problems. Many of you know that when you leave the major city and go back home, in quotes, or go to the village for 2 weeks, you come back and your skin is fresh because you're breathing fresh air. Our cities are overpopulated because infrastructure it's concentrated on the cities. We need, and guess what? And I will close with this. Governments need to be put under more pressure. Don't believe the lie that says that, oh, there is no money to deploy infrastructure. It's a big lie because there is almost no government that is not taxing telecom companies to get what is called universal services funds. In Nigeria, in Ghana, in Zambia, in Zimbabwe, in every one of our countries that have universal services funds, those funds need to stop funding politician-friendly projects and fund the last mile so that everyone, every young person from Algeria to Zimbabwe can have access to the internet in their villages. And so they don't have to run to cities. Many people in running to cities. I lost the so I'll close it there and say, if you can't get out of their way, then you will cause more problems. Let subnational governments begin to compete with each other, and let's stop this mentality of keeping them poor so that they can vote for us. Because at the end of the day, if we create wealth, no only will history be kind to our regions.
Thank you very much, Benga. That was very insightful. I think we'll be wrapping up our panel now. I just want you to just say in 5 seconds, just 5 seconds, because we're starting the other panel right now. A major problem bedeviling the digital space right now is the issue of fake news, and the spread of fake news is a concern to governments across the globe. The Minister of Information recently said that we must kill fake news before it kills us, and in 5 seconds, so that I can introduce the other panel, Can you just tell me 2 strategies we can use to control the impact of fake news so that we don't keep we don't have more people talking about the negatives of the digital space, and forgetting about its positives? How do we, in just 5 seconds, how do we deal with that issue?
3 things. Number 1, fake news is an expression of the anger and resentment in society. Even if you shut down the internet, you will hear it on the radio. Even if you shut down the radio, small circles of people. We used to have this thing called free readers club around newspapers when I was much younger, and that is where we discussed. It will continue to happen. When you realize that, number 1, you realize that the enemy is not the people using social media. The enemy is the fact that there is something people are trying to say. So 2 approaches. Number 1 is that anywhere in the world, from Germany, to the UK, to France.
As you see, in the early days of COVID, in February, March 2020, many schools were shut down across the country and across the continent. And I was on a panel with the Federal Minister for Communication, and he was saying that now we are going online, children are studying online. I'm saying the realities of children or young people studying online in Nigeria is just about 1 to 5% of the entire student population. So what happens to the rest of the population? We do not have the opportunities to engage with digital tools, like Mr. Sheson was saying in his last presentation, where he says, even when you run a program and you give a mobile phone to a student who takes a mobile phone to an household where there's no other mobile phone, there's a high likelihood that the parent is going to be the one who would end up using that device within that household. So as we continue to think towards solutions that are coming out from government to respond to policy initiatives like the African Youth Charter, like the implementation of the National Youth Policy, I must commend that there's quite a number of initiatives that have come out of government in Nigeria. Very recently, we're seeing the National Youth Investment Fund that is being currently rolled out, and there are different facets to it. There's been some concerns that have been raised in a number of quarters as to how to ensure that this thing is ring-fenced away from the usual political dynamics that we see, where slots are already pre-allocated to political gladiators at different cadres of government, but to ensure that people within the polity have opportunities to benefit from initiatives that are rolled out by government. And this current crisis that we're facing in Nigeria around police reforms, SARS brutality, has also shown that many times when policies are designed, and we see that through the distribution of palliatives on COVID, at the center, you would have said X number of metric tons have been allocated to a certain state, and this has been distributed on paper. But what we have now realized is that many times these things are warehoused in places, and it does not get to that last mile distribution. And for me, that last mile distribution is what any policy implementation needs to focus on. And that's what we also need to do in monitoring and ensuring that initiatives like the National Youth Investment Fund actually benefits not myself and Mr. Sheyi, who sits in fancy offices in capital cities, but the young people in villages, in suburbans, in slums across the country. How can they benefit and plug into such initiatives without having contacts and connections to Abuja or to their state government and state governors? Within the context of innovation around implementing the African Youth Charter on COVID-19, the world that we know it is changing. Young people are using social media tools to understand their rights. They are having access to information at their fingertips. And young people, not only in Nigeria, but we're seeing this wave across the continent and across the world, are demanding for their rights. Now, in the past, police brutality would happen. People don't have mobile phones to capture them. We can't film them, and we can't share it as quickly as possible using social media. So there's no opportunity to build this collective rage and this collective fight for rights. But this world is changing, and we need government to begin to understand that this world is changing, and we can use it for good. One of the things that I have advocated for, if you look at the UK Parliament, there's an opportunity on the UK Parliament where anyone, any citizen in the United Kingdom has any issue that it concerns them. You go to UK petitions, you open a petition. The UK Parliament commit to, once your petition reaches 100,000 signature, you're going to get a response from the parliament. Once it hits 200,000 signatures, parliament is going to debate that specific issue on the floor of parliament within, I think, within the committed to 90 days thereabout. This provides an opportunity for an interaction between citizens and governments at different levels. So in such a case where people are angry about a certain thing on social media, there's a right channel for them to have these issues discussed in different levels of government. And we have the same thing in the US. We need such channels in Nigeria whereas we don't have a case where there's a different bubble on social media and then there's a different bubble on within government circles. And the only time these two bubbles mix is when one bubble boils over, as we have seen with this police brutality. This is not the first time Nigerians have been talking about police brutality. This is something that's been spoken about for the last 6 years. But this was the time that it boils over. And now everybody's speaking about it. The president, the vice president in NEC, we see all former heads of state had a virtual meeting with the president. Now everybody is now suddenly an urgent issue. Things do not need to get to boil over in Nigeria before we find solutions to it. The last panel, the last thing I'll speak about, the last panel spoke about education. And I think the chair, the convener of that panel was speaking about what the previous generation benefited from their parents, which is the only thing we can give to you is education. You get educated and then you can pave your way within the polity. That is not the thing we can give to our children anymore. Majority of children in Nigeria go to public schools. Public schools are known to not have quality education anymore. So I always say to people, let me take a state, if you are in Kano and you go to a public primary school with no extramural classes, and you go to public secondary school with no extramural classes, the chances that you will enter into any university in Nigeria is so low, is extremely very low. So, and that's the bulk of the students in Nigeria go to public schools. They go to public schools. So if the quality of education is so weak, and young people that were funneling into the educational system get this weak education, they are not able to build anything substantive on the education that they gain in this institution. So we need to reform our education, ensure that it's quality. We need to ensure that our young people have quality skills, and that way they can create a pathway for themselves as a lead within this new society that we have found ourselves in. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Rotimi, and I appreciate your thoughts around youth participation, reaching the last mile. I'll go straight to Kamara now. And Kamara, I mean, the African Youth Charter itself is both a political and a legal document. From where you sit as someone that is within the All African Students Union, how do you think we advocate to government or work with government on ensuring that this charter is implemented across all African countries? Over to you, Kamara, and I'd like to take your thoughts for two minutes.
Thank you so much. Extremely glad to be part of this platform. And I will start by giving you a background of the realities in Sierra Leone as far as youth participation and inclusion in leadership and decision-making is concerned, and as far as the implementation of the African Youth Charter is concerned. You know, the Sierra Leone youth have been struggling for inclusion, and the Sierra Leonean youth have been struggling for inclusion and participation in leadership and decision-making process since independence. The youth who constitutes more than half the country's population have been marginalized and neglected throughout the decades by successive governments. And this history of marginalization and the emergence of the pre-war status quo undermine the ongoing efforts being made by the African Union to create a platform wherein the recommendations made by the provisions in the African Youth Charter will be implemented. And it is the prevalence of this pre-war status quo in our contemporary Sierra Leonean society, characterized by poverty, literacy, limited livelihood opportunities, that restrict the ability of the youth to provide for themselves and contribute meaningfully to the growth of their society. So I can say, despite the introduction of the African Youth Charter and the numerous youth-related enactments being made by the Parliament of Sierra Leone, the youth continue to wallow in dehumanizing conditions. For more than 3 decades, Sierra Leone has been listed among the lowest levels of poverty, where all indicators measuring human development are abysmal. So that speaks volumes of the fact that so much has not been done to implement the recommendations contained in the Youth Charter. The socioeconomic realities of young people is still deeply rooted in unemployment, marginalization, poverty, and disengagement. So it is this refusal by the ruling class to improve the living conditions of young people and make avenues for engagement relevant to their aspirations that led and still leads to mistrust between the government and a huge chunk of its youth population. So this mistrust has also sometimes leads to frequent confrontations between the government and its youth. So this has been the case throughout the decades. It was the case during the 1977, 1984 student demonstrations, and it has also been the case in recent times. So in the 1977 and the 1984 student demonstrations, the students were trying to draw the attention of the government to the badly needed democratic reforms in the country. The government responded violently, and a huge chunk of students were killed in the process. So this recalcitrance demonstrated by the government to engage student demonstrators led to a mass exodus of students to Libya, where they were trained into revolutionary warfare, and most of these students developed the vision to initiate a revolution in Sierra Leone. So because of limited opportunities, many young people, both educated and uneducated, joined the revolution. So as a result, we had 11-year civil war. So that shows how a small number of people could do to wreck a country. So that was the situation in Sierra Leone. So a huge chunk of the youth population participated in the war. There were brutalities, there were systematic amputation of limbs and legs. And after the war, we also saw marginalization, even in the course of the Lome Peace Agreements, the agreements that finally ended the war. Throughout the build-up and the signing of the Lome Peace Agreements, youth were excluded, even though they formed the huge chunk of the fighting forces. The agreement itself was loaded with power sharing agreements that benefited only the political class. So at the end of the day, a Hitler-like rebel leader was made the equivalent of a vice president as a result of the Lome Peace Agreement. Then we also saw so many of the youth and women who participated in the war also faced discrimination and were severely affected by the eligibility criteria for inclusion into the disarmament, demobilization, and reintegration program for ex-combatants. There was an eligibility criteria. There were eligibility criteria made for ex-combatants who produce weapons and ammunition, meaning those who played support roles were marginalized. And most of these support roles were those who served as spies, load carriers, wives of ex-combatants, and most of them were young people. Most of them were marginalized as a result of the eligibility criteria, and the role they played was also crucial to the maintenance and success of the fighting forces. So with the war, during the war, we realized that most of the Sierra Leonean youth played prominent role in the fighting forces, and in some cases, even in their communities. It was a common practice for chiefs and all public, those who hold public positions, to be killed or publicly humiliated as if it was an attempt to strip them of their despotic powers and make them ordinary. So when we return after the war, Sierra Leone, we also saw a re-emergence of the pre-war status quo, including traditional leaders, and that again led to the pre-war status quo gaining control of communal and national resources. So it's created a lot of problems. The youth were again marginalized, and it led to a withdrawal syndrome, because most of the youth realized that it made no sense fighting the establishment, because at the end of the day, the very things they tried to change also re-emerge after the war. So that is the reality we are contending with today. So even after in 2009, when the National Youth Commission Act was enacted by the Parliament of Sierra Leone, the Act established the National Youth Commission, which works in collaboration with the Ministry of Youth and the Ministry of Finance and Economic Planning to provide support for youth activities. In addition to that, there is form of engagement, and there were other initiatives like the graduate internship programs that we are meant to coordinate. That we are meant to. The reality is that there is very little tangible evidence to show how these youth initiatives have positively impacted on the lives of young people. Many young people are not even created by these initiatives. So the challenges are still there, and the political will is not even there to have most of these recommendations implemented. So many a time, even those placed in charge to implement recommendations are more concerned with serving their political godfathers than fighting for the aspirations of young people.
So Mr. Kamara, can I quickly hold your thoughts for a while? I like that historical perspective. I like how you mentioned issues around exclusion, the struggle for participation, including some of the reasons why we have young people withdrawing. But let me quickly go to Ethiopia. Let me see whether the situation is the same in Ethiopia, especially when you look at the African Youth Charter and the fact that that document is meant to serve as a framework for equal partnership. So Cisse, you've heard what Mr. Kamara said. Can you just provide some thoughts on how best we can address that withdrawal symptom and also that struggle for participation as we've seen across Africa? I would be more interested in you telling us, how can we form this equal partnership using your experience in Ethiopia? Cisse, over to you, please. And I'll ask that you please do this in 2 minutes because this session is already winding down and we want to seize the energy in the room. Cisse, please.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. It's a great pleasure for me to participate in this important conference. I'm Sisai Tarraqain from Children and Youth Development Organization, which is development interventions. So as far as involvement of youth civil society organization in the ratification, in the implementation of the African Youth Charter, most of organization, honestly speaking, is not involved, and also the actual implementation of the African Youth Charter, I think, is not as such satisfactory. So, in fact, there are a lot of policies, strategies related to the young people in Ethiopia, but the actual implementation, when we see the actual implement policies, is very weak. So the documents are very much attractive. There are a lot of intervention which is important for young peoples, but when we see the actual implementation, especially in the grassroots level, it's not as much is not as such well implemented. Even if some government officials, some government offices is not well aware about the policies, the strategies. So it needs intervention, it needs awareness creation interventions and other engagement strategies to aware the government official at grassroots level, as well as in the young people, in the young people at in general. So it's important to partnership with the youth organization and the government. When we see the relationship and the partnership among the youth organization and the government, it's somehow a loose strategy. There is no any structured and coordinated collaboration among the parties. So due to that problems, there are a lot of problems happening in Ethiopia in the last few years. Yeah, so there was a violation, there was a conflict among different ethnics, different young people. So this is due to the proper engagement of young people. So it needs to engage young people meaningfully in the implementation of the African Youth Charter, as well as policies found exists in the country. So parties is not as such strong and well coordinated.
Yes, thank you very much, Sise. I mean, I heard you loud and clear that implementation isn't satisfactory, and I think that's the trend we're seeing from Nigeria to Sierra Leone to Ethiopia. But I also want to tease out the fact that there are interventions by government in some of these countries. For instance, when Rotimi was talking, he mentioned a youth fund for young people in Nigeria. When Kamara also mentioned youth councils, the setting up of youth councils and what's it called, and internships. All right. So we're having some level of activities from government, but from your perception or perspective, they are not satisfactory enough, especially not reaching the grassroots. And you've mentioned the need for awareness and engagement strategy. So let me go back to Sierra Leone, but this time I'll be talking with Ishmael. Ishmael, you heard all of this situation, that I'm picking this back into what our friend from Ethiopia said around awareness and an engagement strategy. What do you think we can do better in terms of raising awareness on the African Youth Charter? And how do you think we can engage people better, especially when you look at that document? Again, I emphasize that document is a political document and also a legal document. Can we hear your thoughts, Ishmael, for 2 minutes? And please, when you're speaking, can we also see your face? Thank you.
Yeah, sure. I'm live. Thank you very much. I'm happy to participate in this conference, especially when it comes to issues surrounding young people. We are youth activists, and we hope that some of these things we are discussing, they get to hear. And the story is just the same when it comes to implementation of the youth charter. Is not there. All right, now look at. I want to start with the obligation. It states that the state parties should adopt such legislative and other measures to effect the provisions of the charter. But believe me, we've not seen any law or rule in my country that says that young people are not too young to rule. These things are not happening. The implementation is not there. In fact, how many of the young people in my country know about the African Youth Charter? This also is another problem. We have some of these platforms set aside, like my brother mentioned about the Youth Commission. In fact, I reached to that point. the Youth Commission is one body, but I tell you, the malfunctions are so much. Okay, I also want to look at the aspect of Article 4 of that same charter, which states that the freedom of expression. Something happened recently in my country. A young lawyer, actually made mention about something which relates to the Supreme Court's ruling against qualifications of lawyers, in the aspect of them handling certain position or offices in the country. What happened was that the Supreme Court ruled that to be arrested, and at the end of the day, his license to operate as a lawyer is going to be suspended. See, these things are only on paper. Nothing is happening. Okay, our government or African leaders actually implement what is in the African Youth Charter. Believe me, Africa will be a better place. Now, let me go to Article 11, which talks about youth participation. I tell you, young people are not allowed to participate. The space, the platform is not created for us. We are trying so much to create the platform, but I tell you, the government are not creating this platform for young people. Okay, none of it is that. If we really want to have a flood the power as young people to drive this change forward, but at the end of the day, the government are not providing the resources needed. Okay, and now we are talking about collaboration with, between the African Commission and then youth organizations in Africa. I think for me, what I suggest is that I want us to note this down. Since African countries are paying money to to run the affairs of the African Union, what I suggest is they need the union needs to increase the amount of money these governments are paying. So at the end of the day, they in turn will partner directly with organizations in Africa. Because I think if the monies these countries are paying, and at the end of the day, this money are going to them again to run youth programs, but these programs are not being run. So I think for me, the monies should be increased, and at the end of the day, we should they should partner directly. There are so many platforms. Like for example, we could set up a network. Let's say Sierra Leone, all youth organizations are coming together. We have one network, and we have a representative. We have this kind of body or committee that represents all youth organizations in Africa or in Sierra Leone. Likewise, in other countries, at the end of the day, this one or two representatives in each of these countries will form the Africa body, right, that will represent all youth organizations. So as to have these things directly from the African Union to these youth organizations, because if they pass them through the government, then I think that's a sham. And now let's look at again youth participation. Find out the National Youth Commission in Sierra Leone, 95% of the workers in that commission are not youth. So where is the platform? Where is the space for us to participate? Give us a chance. We have the zeal, we have the energy, we have the idea to rule this thing. Give us the National Youth Commission. Let it be operated by young people, and how best to move from that aspect. And also, Article 14 of the African Youth Charter talks about how we foster development. We integrate young people into every other thing. But at the end of the day, in my country, we have what was a project called, it was on agriculture. At the end of the day, that youth farm was only implemented online, on social media. Nothing happens on the field, okay? So we are saying that if this thing is really, if the African Union really wants Africa to develop, let them take this development and pass it directly to African youth organizations through the network of, I mentioned about the strategy of how we form networks by countries. At the end of the day, the heads of these countries will be represented, will represent the rest of the other countries in this platform. Yeah, so that's my submission.
Thank you very much, Ishmael. I hear you loud and clear on the need for us to have like a youth network where some of these things can go through. And, I must also say that we've heard all of these stories as to how young people are not being included. Can I play the devil's advocate? And I want to check whether Wango is online, or whether Yolanda, Manuel is online. I'm trying to look for the two of them. I can't track them. If Manuel is online, I think Manuel is online. Manuel, we have the opportunity of the Federal Ministry of Youth joining our conference, and I'm so excited about that. I do also have the likes of Ambassador Keshi and Mrs. Dio Keshi. So let's do some intergenerational dialogue. Now let me play the devil's advocate and say, Manuel, if you're hearing me, Manuel is the Deputy Director of Angolan Youth Institute. I am, by the power not given today, making you African governments. And because again, Nigeria is a good and big economy, I want you to advise, the federal ministries of youth. What do you think they should do differently? But my being a devil's advocate is now saying, all of the blame has gone to government. Is there anything young people should do differently? Manuel, do you want to tell us what exactly should we do differently as young people? If I can't see Manuel, I would escalate this to Rotimi and ask directly Rotimi, government. Is government only? Don't mind the fact that I look like a politician, but is government the sole problem? The issue of raising awareness, the issue of engaging, the issue of getting into that space. What role for young people? Rotimi, please.
Thank you very much. And I was smiling. You look like an honorable minister. So you are the government that we see right now, and we would be happy to say that. Yeah, I feel like, and I always say that, yes, government has a major role to play, but we also have our own roles to play in whichever corner that we find ourselves in Nigeria, across the continent. My colleagues from Sierra Leone and other parts have spoken very well. One of the things that we have to play is that we all need to be active citizens. So my friends know me, I've been involved in activism, mobilizing young people from time immemorial. And when we have these conversations, they say, oh, there's this thing happening, you're not going to protest. I'm saying, nobody is paid to protest in Nigeria. Well, I know some people are hired to protest once in a while, but we all need to be concerned about our society. If our society is going well, we all benefit. If the police is harassing people, we are all at a disadvantage. So we all need to be active citizens. The more we put pressures on our government, elected officials, and we also take advantage of what is in our environment, and we also monitor, we're helping government one way or the other when they get feedback from us. Sometimes government wants to do right, but the channels at which to make this happen. Someone can't sit in Abuja and monitor a program that benefits 400,000 young people across Nigeria. On paper, everything would look good. But if you provide feedback from wherever you are, you're in Ogun State, you're in Zamfara, you're in Kano, if you provide that feedback, that channel of feedback, things can happen. And I have tried it many times. Sometimes we get responses. I'll give you an instance. We're tracking universal basic education grants to states. And the data from UBE, Abuja tells us there are quite a number of states who haven't accessed their grants for 3-4 years. These grants are piling up. And quality of education, primary education, basic education in these states are appalling. So we did a letter. We wrote to 10 state governments. Out of 10, we got responses from 4. Our commissioner for finance in Nasarawa State came to our office based on that letter to have a conversation and then provided context as to why they have not been able to access the money. I didn't know anyone in Nasarawa State. I don't know the governor. I don't know the commissioner. We did a simple letter. We sent it by courier. We got feedback. So I tell people, if you sit down and say, things don't work, we don't want to play our part, we don't want to be active citizens, we have to do something. We're doing it for posterity. We're doing it for our kids. We're doing it to ensure that we live in a better society and make things work. So we all need to be active citizens. That's an important part of the role that everybody needs to play. If I would advise government, you say, technical advisor, how do you advise government to going forward? I feel the government has not listened enough. There is a palpable anger in the land. People are hungry, unemployment is very high, and government is not listening enough. One that I always shake every time. I've worked a lot with Ministry of Youth Development. I have monitored what the ministers for youth and the last 5 to 7 ministers of youth have done. Anytime a new minister comes, it's a new initiative. They don't look at what the previous minister has done. They're starting afresh, and it's not helping. It's not helping the system, right? Everybody wants their name to be attached to a certain policy. It's not helping the system. First, we need to listen. What do young people want? And that listening needs to go around the country and ask them, not just the elite young people like me and you who can sit on Zoom and speak lots of grammar. What we need is not what young people in the villages need. In the last 2 or 3 weeks, and I know you know about it, I was in Ekiti, and I had opportunity to travel length and breadth of that state and interact with young people. We ran into hoodlums who were angry about police reforms, and we had to negotiate our way out of that situation. Many of these guys are hungry. They have different needs, right? So we need to first listen to what do they need, and how do we remove the blocks, the stumbling blocks from ensuring that solutions get to them. Many times government is not the provider of the solution. Many times the private sector can do it better. Government's role is to figure out how can we take away the building blocks for innovation to happen with young people so that they can unleash that energy that we have. In the middle of all of the police reform, one good news filtered out of Nigeria, and that's the fact that there's a tech firm in Nigeria, a fintech firm, who has now sold and raised, I think, $200 million. I mean, when people saw the images of one of them has this dreadlock, this is the target of Nigerian police, the image of the people that police target and say, these are many make this happen. Government needs to sit with this group and say, what are your stumbling blocks and how can we remove these stumbling blocks so that you can innovate and ensure that that ripple effect, look at it, one farm alone, the ripple effect that that farm would have on the tech ecosystem in Nigeria is going to be great. We need to ensure that there are more ripples, and government's role is to listen and say, how can we solve this problem? My final point is this, and it's an example I've spoken in government circles for a long time. The Nigerian government has signed a lot of bilateral agreements for scholarships, meaning we've signed an agreement, a foreign country is providing scholarships for young people in Nigeria. Some are domiciled in the Federal Ministry of Education, PTDF is running scholarship, NITDA is running scholarship. There are different government agencies that are running scholarship. There is not one single portal where any young Nigerian can log in and see all scholarship that the Nigerian government is providing. So if you are lucky, you will hear about the one from Ministry of Education. If you're not lucky, you don't see it. But we need to be able to aggregate this information so that information and opportunity is not just available to the lucky ones. We need to ensure that we build a merit-based system in our economy so that the child of nobody, like Benga mentioned in his speech, the story of Favor, who was able to get that job at the British High Commission, can sit anywhere, apply for these opportunities and get them. We need to ensure that we democratize access for young people in Nigeria, and that's very important for us to build an egalitarian society. Thank you.
Thank you, Rotimi. I hear you so well on democratizing information and making sure information is open, especially within the context of the African Union, African Youth Charter being a framework for empowerment and equal partnership for Africa's development. And part of Africa's development is good education, infrastructure, electricity, good internet access, and what have you. Now, having said that, I'm closing down now, and I'll quickly go to Kamara. Kamara, this time around, I'll be strict with my minute because I want to round up in 3, 4, 5 minutes. Kamara, what's your last thoughts on today's conversation around how can we foster inclusive collaboration between African Union Commission, African Youth CSOs for an improved advocacy on the implementation of the AU Youth Charter? Your thoughts in 1 minute, please, Kamara. And can we see your video this time around?
Hello?
Hello? Yes, good.
I think the African Union has to work collaboratively with civil societies, organizations across Africa to see how these the provisions in the Youth Charter can be implemented. And they should not just leave that task to the government alone, because many a time when it comes to collaboration between government and civil society, organizations. The government will be very, very selective in the choice of civil society organizations, preferring those who are singing their praise. So I think the African Union should not just leave that task of choosing civil society organizations, so the government, they have to ensure that everybody is involved, so that these provisions contained in the charter will be communicated to the local population, because many people across Africa are not even aware about the existence of the African Youth Charter. So it is for the Union, AU, to collaborate with civil society organization. I think the young people also have a role to play in raising awareness, because many a time young people are not demanding for quality delivery, for quality service delivery, and so many other things. I don't know if time will permit me. I want to.
Yes, let's just hold it. I mean, we can always keep the conversation going after this, but I hear you so well on a multi-stakeholder process that includes the strand of civil society. And, you know, we don't have to be selective. I hear you so well on that, and that's loud. Cisse, do you want to quickly share with us in 60 seconds, which is 1 minute, your closing thoughts? Cisse, please.
Thank you. Yes, my thoughts in relation to strengthen the collaboration between the African Union and the youth civil society organization is it needs to create a platform structured and regularly continuous engagement with the young civil society organization, because this civil society organization has a chance, has opportunity to get the grassroots or young people. So it needs a structured and continuous engagement with the African Union must be establish a kind of platform that young people engaging in implementation of the African Youth Charter, the implementation, the progress, and the challenge as well. Thank you.
Yeah, I hear you so well and loud on engagement, and maybe this is the time to create an African youth engagement strategy that can be shared across with our government. I hear you so loud on that. Ishmael, can we close with your thoughts?
Yeah. So what I would like to recommend is that we create, like I mentioned, let's try to create this kind of a platform that encourage all young people or organizations that are headed by young people to work directly with the African Union. Directly, I mean, not like pass the development through the government, you know, because that would be end up in shams. But if we have this kind of network that have young people be represented directly or giving projects or activities, you know, programs to implement directly to their nations, I think that would be better. And the other thing you mentioned, what if young people need to do more? I tell you, do a research to see how many organizations that we have in Africa that are run by youth. There are so many, but they are not going, they are not moving for it. Do you know why? Because the resources are not there. The platform is not there. The government that should have, you know, created the platform, people go, or young people go, they are not doing anything. So young people are really trying. To me, I don't see that it's the fault of young people. If 10 people in Sierra Leone stood up to do something, if the government empower these 10 people, believe me, indirectly, these 10 people will be able to also empower another 10. The line goes on and on. So that's would be my part.
Yes, thank you very much, Rotimi Olawale. Thank you very much, Kamara Osman Bikal. Thank you, Cisse Taregan, and thank you, Ishmael Roland Kamara, for sharing your thoughts with us today on this very panel that has looked at how we can foster an inclusive collaboration between the African Union Commission and African Youth CSOs for improved advocacy on the implementation of the AU Youth Charter. I'm sure all of your voices and the conversations we've had so far will go into a report that documents all that has happened today, and that can form policy directions. And at this point, it's been a pleasure for me to be able to moderate this session. Many thanks to AfriGrowth Foundation for the opportunity to serve, and I'll now give this back to the moderator.
Thank you very much, Shay. I thank you for your input, especially covering up for me when technology took me out of the space. I'd also like to thank all the panelists as well. You've done justice to the topic, and I'm sure all our attendees have left this panel with a lot to take home. Like I've always said, Africa has never lacked policy documents or policy developers. Africa has always lacked the will, the political will, the legal will, if I would say, to implement some of these policies and bring them, to fruition. The ability for nation states to understand how important the development, the empowerment of its youthful population is highly critical to our evolution as a continent. I would like to thank everybody who has contributed thus far, all the panelists, all the attendees, the Honorable Minister of Youth and Sports, represented by the Honorable Pamsek, the AfriGrowth Foundation for putting this together. I'd like to thank you all and close with this. Everything rises and falls on leadership. There's nothing the youthful population of our continent would achieve if the leadership lacks the raw will and emotions to make sure that everything the African youth needs to be empowered with to be able to competitively position themselves in line with their contemporaries across the globe. If we don't have that, then all we have done here is just rhetoric. So I thank everybody once again, and I invite the president of the AfriGrowth Foundation to give her closing remarks and bring this wonderful event to a close. I'd like to invite you, madam. You have the floor now.
Thank you so much, Dr. Akpata. You have done wonderfully well. I must say that all the panelists, everybody has kind of, they've done so well that I am, being a woman, you know how emotional we can get sometimes. And I sit here and I feel very humbled. Humbled because I'm confident that with people like you and all those who have participated in this conference, against all odds, you've made it possible. And for that reason, I have a lot of hope and trust that this is, Africa is God's own continent, because we rest on the grace of God most of the time, and we make things happen. Things that look impossible becomes possible once it is connected in the continent. So with this, I would like to say thank you to everybody, but most importantly, I would just want to give you like a wrap up and resolutions that we are drawing away from this event today. If I do have the floor, Dr. Akpata, please let me know, but because you are still in charge until I formally take over from you. But I can only say thank you.
Thank you, madam. Yes, you do have the floor to deliver your closing remarks and bring this great event.
Based on all the proceedings and discourse, I dare say we have all agreed that the African Youth Charter is indeed a veritable document which can effectively champion youth engagement, inclusive development and empowerment. The African Youth Charter is a unique instrument for the protection and safeguarding of the African youth because it takes into consideration African values and respect to youth development. The present COVID-19 has helped us to discover the advantage of digitalization. The digital media is a veritable space through which youth can effectively converge and forge alliances and engage key actors in government. Civil society organizations should equally invest more in programs that will improve the use of digital media for inclusive development and engagement. There should be increased synergy and partnership between civil society organizations and actors, as there is power in collaboration. Civil society organizations should serve as a bridge or fill a gap so that communications can flow back and forth between youths and other key stakeholders in government. They can do this by monitoring implementation of important and key programs which the government has put in place to empower youth. In this regard, effort should be made to include youth in the monitoring process. General mentoring and peer mentoring should be availed to youth at all levels. AfriGrowth Foundation, as a mentoring organization, we take mentoring very seriously. And indeed, I just say with all humility that we've mentored about 10,000 youths over a period of time we took on mentoring as youth empowerment. And we encourage other organizations, start the art of mentoring. That is one of the oldest form of schooling in the world. If you go back to history, you will see that strong personalities were made by strong mentors. This we can imbibe with little or no cost, even in Nigeria. In addition, civil society and the private sector should also partner with civil societies, empowerment, and even what are called for-profit entities, and make sure that there's a synergy, a constant synergy that continues between all these groups, because the youth has their own role to play in this process. Firstly, I believe youth should strive to be more informed in key policies and play a role in impacting such policies. Civil society organizations should create more awareness and publicity to youths in their database on key local and international policies, such as the African Youth Charter and other important policies. The time is imminent for regional bodies such as ECOWAS to partner with civil society and organizations to champion the process of implementing the Africa Youth Charter. The African Union and the Office of the Youth Envoy has come up with credible plans, such as the current Action Plan for Africa Youth Empowerment 2019 to 2023. Now, civil society organizations should key into these plans and map out ways that can complement the effort of the African Union, specifically in advocating for better implementation of the Youth Charter. These are, along with the many thoughts expressed in this event today, should more than be enough for us to move forward as we should, with purpose and clarity. There should be no debates anymore, and we shouldn't each try to do it differently. We are all speaking the same language. We are all pushing towards the same. So I strongly believe that even after this particular gathering, we will do everything within our power, together with some of our very key stakeholders who cooperate with us, to move this discussion not only forward as a discussion, but as a strong implementation strategy. And with that, I say thank you very much. I thank you all for taking so much time out of your busy schedule these days. But I also want to assure us all that one thing we cannot afford to do is for our generation not to positively and aggressively invest in the growth of our youth. Therein lies the power of a nation, that a group of youths can come together and say to us, after your last meeting, guess what? The youths are taking on the next meeting, And these are the topics to be discussed. And this would be the action plan we've taken since that meeting that we would like to discuss at this new one. For me, I would say to you all, the truth of the matter is that Nigerian youths have traveled around the world to the glory of God. Nigerian youths are very versatile. I mean, if you see what they come up with, I feel proud, you know, to say I'm a Nigerian and all these youths are children. With that, I say thank you very much. May God bless us all. And I thank every single one of you who have contributed today. I haven't paid you a dime, but you know in my heart that I appreciate each and every one of you. And I beg of you, do not let this conversation end here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Thank you, all our distinguished speakers, our distinguished guests, our distinguished attendees. We look forward to having you at the next Illuminate Africa Youth Conference, where we'll be delving deeper into some of the things we've discussed today and assessing how far we've gone as regards implementing these strategies, just like the President has just mentioned. I thank you all, and I wish you a fantastic day ahead. Have a great day. Bye-bye.